Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky's Education Commissioner, Dr. Wayne Lewis, is here. It is a busy time in Frankfort with the state legislature considering lots of bills that could affect our schools. A school safety bill is the legislature's highest priority this session. There are calls for lots of requirements. Some are asking how schools will pay for the new requirements. Commissioner Lewis has been laser focused on equity in our schools. What socioeconomic factors cause some students to do so much better than others on required testing? He visits schools often. He urges students to pick a career area as early as they can. Education Commissioner Dr. Wayne Lewis is joining us today, and we thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
I guess when the legislature's in town, it's like you have to watch supportively about some things and warily about others, right?
That is accurate.
So we'll talk about some of what is up for discussion, but school safety apparently is the highest priority of the legislature. It is Senate Bill 1. We're just over a year removed from the awful Marshall County school shooting, and shortly after that was the massacre at Florida High School. As Kentucky lawmakers move forward, do you like the approach you're seeing?
I do like the approach I'm seeing. I think it took a tremendous amount of leadership in the time between last session and this session on the part of House and Senate leadership and those education committees to bring folks together on a bipartisan basis, to work with stakeholders across the state. And I think what they've come up with is a pretty comprehensive approach to how we should be looking at school safety. So it doesn't just include hardening the target, physical security, but also takes a really hard look at the way we provide for the social and emotional support and health of our kids, because that's a critical aspect of school safety as well.
Is there one part that is more important than others?
I don't.
Really?
I don't. I don't think. I think of attending to kids' social and emotional health, ensuring that kids have loving and caring adults who they trust, that they can confide in, share information with. I equate that at the same level as I do with physical security, making sure doors are locked, ensuring that there are school resource officers where appropriate. I think all of those things work together to create a safer environment for our kids.
We're in that non-budget year, so while there is all this discussion and, of course, an interest in getting something done and getting some laws on the books and some suggestions for schools on the books, there is at this point really not a lot of money to fund those. So a lot of the school districts are concerned that they're already in a tough budgetary situation, and they may be hit with new requirements under the school safety law.
Those are legitimate concerns. The requirements of Senate Bill 1 financially will be significant. There'll be costs to the state. I think there'll probably be even greater costs to school districts. There'll be costs to get buildings up to the place where they can meet the physical security requirements. There'll be costs for school resource officers. There will be costs to reduce the ratio of current ratio of kids to mental health professionals, kids to school counselors. There's no doubt that in order to successfully implement what the General Assembly is proposing, it will take a pretty significant financial commitment on the part of the state, including state government and local school districts.
So you see the money maybe coming next year, I would take it. Or do you think they find some way to get into the appropriating the money in this along with the bill?
You know, that I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it comes this year or next year, but I do hear recognition on the part of the General Assembly that it is absolutely going to take a financial commitment in order to make this work.
Commissioner, we are also seeing a very disturbing uptick in suicides involving kids. We're seeing even the ages 10, 11, 12, certainly teenagers. This is also being seen, by the way, in colleges. I mean, it is really an issue that is attention-getting right now. Is that part of this whole holistic approach to trying to communicate with kids?
You're absolutely right. So these conversations are not separate conversations. When we are really doing our jobs and attending to the social and emotional health and well-being of our kids, we're watching for signs that kids might want to hurt or their classmates, their teachers, but we also should be paying attention to signs that would lead us to believe that kids might want to hurt themselves. We should be paying attention to bullying, whether it's bullying happening in the classroom, on the schoolyard, through social media. You know, one of the big differences between when I was in school and previous generations versus what kids are facing today is if you were bullied at school, at least you got a respite from it and you could go home and stay inside. I mean, kids today, so sometimes with social media, they never escape what they're dealing with at school with bullying through social media. So we have to, as we think about school safety and kids' safety, think about kids not just who might be likely to hurt other people, but who might be interested in potentially hurting themselves.
Social media monitoring is another potential element of what could be the final version of this Senate Bill 1. Is that something you're supportive of as well?
You know, that's an area I really have to take a closer look at. When we think about watching our kids, monitoring our kids, making sure they're safe, I firmly believe it's joint responsibility on the part of schools and parents. Right? So I don't think we ever want to get to the place where we would suggest or expect that school or teachers take the place of parents. Parents have I believe, the first responsibility. And so I need to take a look at it a little bit closer to better understand it. One, because I don't know how much is appropriate for schools. I don't know how much is realistic to expect that schools could do. But also I think we have to respect parents and the rights and responsibilities of parents.
Commissioner, what would you say to parents who are watching this morning who are very concerned about these things, about school security, about the well-being of their own children? Is there something that you would encourage parents to do right now that maybe we're falling short on?
You know, I would encourage parents to continue to be vigilant. And I say that as a parent, right? To continue to watch our kids, to monitor our kids, to not have as our default stance that things are probably going okay with our kids. I mean, I think there's no substitute to really talking and hearing what they have to say to us, because most of the times in the incidents that are avoided, the catastrophes that are avoided across our state, it's because kids shared information with adults who they care about and adults who they trust. And so building trusting relationships with kids, whether it's parent to kid, adult to kid, teacher to kid, bus driver to kid, is really something all of us really need to be focused on.
Listen and respond the best you can.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, you have been laser focused on equity, and you have traveled the state, and you see the differences in socioeconomic conditions throughout the regions. I know that there is one House bill that you're watching with a little bit of concern on as it regards that right now. How should the education system be better trying to equalize those opportunities out there for all?
You know, equity is a huge issue for us. I think we all understand that kids come to school with differences in home situations. They come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different resources, and all of those things factor into kids' success in school. There's absolutely no denying it. It is also true that regardless of what kids show up to school with, as educators, we have the responsibility and I believe the privilege of serving those kids to the absolute best of our abilities. One of the things we know from research is that even with the differences that kids come to school with, economic, socioeconomic, that effective instruction, instruction where kids are exposed to content at grade level, standards-aligned instruction, changes in our behavior as educators can have impact on both learning outcomes and behavior outcomes. And so the conversation that I'm trying to push across the state is that we do not discount the fact that kids come to us with differences, but also that we don't shortchange the impact that we can have on the academic and behavioral outcomes of kids as educators. Because depending on kids' background, sometimes school becomes their last best hope at achieving the things that we want for our kids to achieve.
And don't limit the potential when you look out there at that classroom as to who may be out there.
Absolutely right.
All right, we are with Commissioner Wayne Lewis, the Kentucky Education Commissioner. More questions for him when we come back on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Our privilege this morning to be visiting with Education Commissioner Dr. Wayne Lewis, who runs our public schools across Kentucky. Bills that you're watching very closely in Frankfort right now. We've talked about school security, an equity bill that is out there. What are some other things that you're really keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so we're really interested in the bill that would make some changes to school-based decision-making councils. I'm a big proponent of school-based decision-making councils. I think they were one of the great additions to what we do in Kentucky public education. Came in that CARA era during the early 1990s. And it involves teachers and parents in school decision-making in a way that I think is really significant, probably more so than any other state. One of the changes I'd like to see is to equalize the number of parents to students. Right now, by statute, the ratio requires that there be one more teacher than the number of parents. I'd like to see an equal number of parents to teachers. I think parents have a lot to contribute to the conversation, and I think it'd say a lot to parents to say that we'd like to give you equal voice to teachers on these councils. The other part is I would like to see the authority to hire school principals return to superintendents. We're the only state in the country where school superintendents are not permitted to hire their school leaders. We hold local boards and school district superintendents to higher degrees of accountability, higher expectations for performance of kids in their schools. It would only follow that because these folks are held accountable, that they are given greater autonomy in being able to make decisions about who these senior level school leaders are. That's a really important piece for us. In the area of school tribunals, where superintendents make decisions on terminating employees, and these are cases not around instructional effectiveness. These are cases where the well-being of kids is put in jeopardy.
A personnel issue that's
really serious personnel issues. We'd like to see reform there. There's a bill in the Senate that would make that a fairer process, because what's happening now is overwhelmingly when superintendents across the state make these types of personnel decisions to terminate personnel, the tribunals are overturning them. Now, I'm not saying that you have to end up in a case where it's 50-50, where the district wins half of them and the employee wins half of them. But when you end up in the range of 70 to 75% of these being overturned, something's not right.
You have spoken many times about work readiness, about trying to get students focused as early as they can on where, at least an area of interest, where they're going with their careers.
That's right.
Are you beginning to see some effectiveness with that push?
I am. You know, as I go across the state, I'm seeing more school districts and regions that are starting to talk to kids earlier and earlier about possibilities, you know, and this is not about tracking kids. The last thing we would ever want to do is take a kid, whether in middle school or high school, and put them on a track and say, this is what you're gonna do, this is what you're gonna be. But we want to kids to start thinking very intentionally about what possibilities could be and make some decisions in their high school coursework that prepare them for what those things could look like. So some of the most promising practices I've seen is school districts taking 8th graders, taking them to career and technical high schools, exposing them to possibilities around careers, talking to high school students about what their coursework looks like, talking to professionals, just kind of getting a sampling of what careers could look like. And then when they get into high school, they're ready to choose elective courses that align with some of those interests, that allow them to see whether or not this is something they really want to explore. For me, I didn't get to do that type of sampling on courses until I got to college.
Right, and so that's giving them an opportunity to pick a direction as well as maybe save on the cost of higher education because
Absolutely.
you don't spend that time, as you say,
Absolutely.
sampling and figuring out what you want to do. All right, we've had, usually snow, some tough winter weather, the flu, flooding, other issues are going around causing some school districts to lose days this year. Many schools have these non-traditional instructional days, these NTI days. Is that working? Are you supportive of those?
I am supportive of NTI days. You know, it's something that's been in place in Kentucky for a few years now. There was legislation last session that directed the State Board of Education for the first time to develop a regulation that gave more structure to the program, set clearer expectations for districts in terms of what those NTI days would look like. And I feel good about that regulation. I think districts have a clearer understanding of what those expectations are, and it's that kids aren't just sitting home doing busy work, but that it's a learning day. If a district is going to use that as a day that they don't have to make up, we want to make sure that actual instruction is happening.
Commissioner, thanks for coming. Appreciate it
Thank you
very
for having
much.
me.
And that is Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. We'll see you bright and early this week, starting with WKYT this morning. Make it a good week ahead.